Good morning. Mighty pretty neighborhood we have here, isn't it? Could be most anywhere, but it happens to be in San Mateo, just south of San Francisco. This house we're stopping at, a girl lives here I want you to meet. Her name is Margaret Sinclair, but everyone calls her Scotty, so why don't we? Here comes Scotty now. For several days she's been haunting the mailbox, looking for a very important letter. That's Scotty's mother there in the garden, and the dog's name is Caesar. But we're too busy to bother with him now. Let's see what's in that letter. So that's it. Scotty has her heart set on being an airline stewardess, and she's going to get her chance. All the flurry of packing and last-minute errands, there wasn't time to think much about leaving home and family. The prospect ahead was too glamorous. In 2 months, she would be a full-fledged United Airlines stewardess, flying back and forth across the country. The plane looked awfully big, and Scotty felt small and lonely as she waved goodbye. But that feeling soon disappeared. The thrill of her very first flight, climbing swiftly over the airport buildings and heading east across the bay. It was fun meeting a stewardess, and she made you feel like very important people when you told her you were going to be a stewardess too. Shortly before lunchtime, she invited you back to the galley to inspect its clever appointments and to see the dainty perfection with which the food trays are prepared and served. And meeting that handsome captain was another highlight of this memorable trip. He was so friendly and human, not a bit stern or standoffish. These exciting new experiences gave plenty of food for daydreaming. And it hardly seemed any time at all until the plane was landing at Cheyenne. Getting off alone at a strange airport, a deal for any girl. So it was to be met by a training claiming luggage and driving the short distance to the training school over the airport. At first sight, the building looked huge. 3 stories. This stewardess training must be a pretty important activity. Well, lots of time to find out during the next 5 weeks. That must be the house mother at the head of the stairs. She's the one who checks in all the girls. The registration formalities were soon completed, and Scotty was ushered into her new home, Dormitory 12. It reminded her of college days, the beds with their gay covers, the prim dressers strewn with their owners' knickknacks, and the girls, why, they might have been her own schoolmates. This is Dodie Gulick from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a college graduate. Joan Stevenson was an office worker in her native Boston. Sylvia Montgomery, office receptionist, hails from Seattle. Liz Swartz clerked in her father's drugstore in Iowa Falls. Jenny Bauman graduated from Ohio State and taught school. Nancy Hoffman had her own knitting shop in Perrysburg, Ohio, and Pat Keenan of Oak Park, Illinois, did research work for an advertising agency. These girls are typical of the several hundred stewardess candidates who enter the training school each year, from colleges from the nursing profession, and from the business world. A few weeks from now, they'll be fully qualified to serve in one of the world's most glamorous occupations. Well, good night. Dormitory life has its problems. There's always one energetic soul who springs into action at the first ring of an alarm clock. And you might know Ginny would be that one. That first class was easy. At least the instructress, Miss Dean, made it seem so. She outlined the duties of a stewardess and described the items aboard the plane entrusted to her care. Who would have believed that it takes so many to keep 50 passengers happy? The transparent models were a big help in visualizing the interior of the airplane. Before they finish, these girls will know every detail of the huge passenger cabin. The theory of flight class was a bit more difficult, but the instructor was patient in his explanations. Even if it did seem like Greek to some, Sylvia especially found this class a pretty tough assignment. But don't worry, she'll make the grade okay. However, classroom problems were forgotten as dinner time rolled around. The food, as the girls soon found out, was plentiful and delicious. Not many schools would give you free tuition, free board and lodging, and even pin money while training for a well-paid career. And back in the dormitory that evening, Scotty had lots to think about as she tried to sort out her impressions in a letter to her mother of her first day at stewardess school. Dearest Mother, this has been a wonderfully exciting day. My first step toward becoming a United Stewardess. The instructors are very patient and kind, and I feel I've learned a lot already. The girls in my dorm are swell. Share an apartment with two of them, Sylvia Montgomery and Nancy Hoffman. If we're lucky enough to be assigned to the same domicile. The days and weeks that followed were crammed full of activity. Perhaps the most fun was the mock-up room, built just like the interior of a DC-6, where you arranged trays and served meals under Miss Dean's watchful eye, over and over again. The girls took turns acting as passengers. The training manual says that a stewardess should develop poise and self-confidence. Even Ginny will have them before she leaves the training center. Ticketing procedure was another class which required lots of study. But like every other course in the school, each step was visualized and patiently explained until you couldn't fail to understand. You even learned the secret of arranging ticket coupons by seating positions so as to call any passenger by name. We particularly enjoyed the films showing airline operations. For the first time, we realized what a complicated business it is and the part we play in the overall picture. The huge maintenance base at San Francisco was an amazing revelation. To see an entire airplane being swallowed up in the repair dock was like watching an ocean liner making port. And then the care and precision with which every part of the airplane is checked by expert mechanics and carefully tested, not only on the ground, but in the air, makes you feel that here is an organization which leaves nothing to chance. Incidentally, it's comforting to know that this airplane can fly on 3 engines, or even 2 if necessary. We learned about dispatching procedures too, and the immense amount of weather and wind data which are available to the pilots when planning their flights. It gave us a new respect for these quiet, competent men who will soon be flying the day the uniform mating. Each girl gets 2 of them, dark blue for winter, light blue for summer. The tailor was very fussy about the fit and hang of each garment. He knows how much it means to a girl to be fitted just right. The manual says skirt length shall be 14 inches from the floor, so 14 inches it is. The wardrobe also includes a top coat and other accessories. The company pays half the cost, as well as all of the cleaning bills. Look, Scotty, that's no way to wear a hat. Let Miss Dean demonstrate. This is the class in personal grooming, where the girls really let their hair down. But to quote the manual again, only to collar length, more like Nancy's here. So it's up to Dodie to make the supreme sacrifice, with Ginny cast in the role of chief executioner. Of course, it wasn't all classes and study periods. There was lots of free time as well. Time for reading and playing cards in the big lounge. Time for games and the latest gossip. And always time for those precious letters from home. On evenings and weekends, you could go to town if you liked, usually to a show, or window shopping. Those fascinating Western outfitting shops really played havoc with the expense budget. Churches were accessible, and attendance was pretty good on the whole. On 2 Sundays, the entire class went skiing.
Down at the airport early in the morning, see the little airplanes all in a row. See the merry pilots revving the engines, see the little airplanes all they go. Down at the airport early in the morning, see the little airplanes all they row. See the merry pilots revving the engines, off they go.
The last week was really hectic. And when Miss Dean handed out the domicile assignments, the tension was terrific. Chicago and New York? Sure, they're okay. But Scotty and her pals have their hearts set on a cute Los Angeles apartment. Watch it now, here it comes. Yippee, they made it! But not Nancy. And Ginny's going to Boston, although she would have preferred San Francisco. Graduation morning dawned bright and clear. And there were no sleepyheads in dormitory 12 today. There were the new uniforms to put on for the first time, and a dozen other last-minute duties before the class gathered in the banquet room for the graduation ceremony. It was fun greeting the company officials with your class songs, and it made you feel important to realize that they'd made a special trip just to attend this graduation. The beautiful flowers, the delicious food, and the laughing chatter made it all very gay, until you realized that your training days were over. Anyway, you and Sylvia weren't separating. So here's a toast to Los Angeles. The after-dinner speeches were all very serious and uplifting. Can't very well have a graduation without speeches, you know. But they did make you realize that you're a very important part of the organization. Important because you will be in closer, more personal contact with your passengers than any other representative of the airline. But now Miss Dean is turning to the diplomas piled neatly beside her. Funny, but you're all choked up. No other graduation ever affected you quite this way. This one means more somehow. Going to be domiciled in Los Angeles. Hope we find a nice apartment. Margaret Sinclair. Oh, that's me. I wish my knees wouldn't shake so. Mr. Eng has a kind face. I wonder how many hundreds of wings he's pinned on girls before me. Well, these are mine, to be treasured for always. Before the day was over, the class had broken up and Scotty and Sylvia were headed westward for Los Angeles. In the days that followed, they found a charming apartment in Hollywood. And now they're on their way to the airport to report for their first assignment. The instructions said to report to the chief stewardess, Miss O'Brien. That's her office they're entering now. Miss O'Brien knows how to put new girls at their ease. Seems to have plenty of time to explain about their new duties. Let's leave them in her capable hands. Two little girls and a great big airplane. That's the way Scotty felt a few days later as she followed her senior stewardess, Naomi Watts, out to the ramp for her very first schedule. Miss Sinclair. There she was at last, a full-fledged member of a United Airlines flight crew. But this is no time for daydreaming. The passengers are coming aboard and there's work to be done. Hope I don't ball anything up. First, the hats and coats. Hats on the rack overhead. Then coats tagged with the seat number so they don't get mixed up. And don't forget to greet the passengers. Remember, they're your guests. Now comes the ticket business. Good thing they emphasized that course in school. This doesn't seem a bit hard. Still, it's sort of nice to have Naomi backing you up, just in case. Watching out for the passengers' comfort didn't seem like work at all. You always did get along well with people. And no matter what their ages, they all seemed to respond to a friendly word and a pleasant smile. In the galley, you felt right at home, thanks to the long hours of practice in the mock-up room at school. Main difference was that now you had 50 hungry people aboard, all wanting to eat at once, so you had to make every second. But the big kick in serving meals was to watch the faces of the passengers light up when you brought their trays of a duty. Who settled in the rear lounge after dinner were formidable at first, but you soon found that they were just ordinary people. It was fun drawing them out about their homes and business affairs, and they seemed to like you too. So maybe a stewardess career after all. Dearest Mother, these past weeks have just flown in more ways than one. I just love my work, and I'm sure the passengers like me. 2 of them have written complimentary letters about me already. Being a reserve, I don't have a regular schedule, but go out on any trip assigned. I've been to Denver a number of times. My former classmate, Pat Keenan, is based there, and we get together occasionally. Once, I flew the Hollywood to Chicago. That's our deluxe flight out of Los Angeles, and features lots of extra service. It usually carries several celebrities. That was the flight when we ran into a low-pressure area east of Denver and landed on the Chicago airport in a snow flurry. It made me appreciate our California sunshine all the more. And then, to cap the climax, the next day they asked me to work a special charter flight to New York. The sun was setting as we came in over Manhattan, and the red light on those skyscrapers was a sight I'll never forget. I'm well and happy and will write soon again. Your loving Scotty. This is the end of our story, but for Scotty and her companions, it's only a beginning. Someday, you may be sure, they'll fold their wings and settle down to the equally important task of creating and building a home. But behind them, in a never-ending procession, will come new ranks of young American womanhood with eyes alert and hearts fixed on a glamorous career in the sky.